Hello everybody and welcome back to Newegg TV. I'm Steve and today in our studio we have Sandeep from none other than Netgear. Sandeep, how are you today, sir?
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you for inviting us.
Oh, no problem. Thank you very much as well for coming in, because I know you've just released the Nighthawk not too long ago, but this is actually a brand new router that I have in front of me. This is much bigger, much more grand than the R7000. This is the R8000. So go ahead. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the R8000?
Yeah, so this is our newest addition to the Nighthawk family. So we had the Nighthawk, which is the R7000. This is the Nighthawk X6, which is a AC 3200 smart Wi-Fi router. So it goes up to a combined maximum speed of 3.2 gigabits per second. And this is the first tri-band Wi-Fi router in the market.
Wow, and actually that's something I want to clarify for those of you at home. If you have heard about tri-band, it's not the new standard per se, but this is something that Netgear is doing to implement more bandwidth for you users out there that have more than two devices, in fact 8 or more. In fact, the most devices that you can possibly throw in this thing, you're going to get a lot more throughput through this router than you would a standard router. But please, Sandeep, can you elaborate a little bit on how the R8000 actually helps users get multiple Wi-Fi clients?
So typically you have a dual band router, which is a 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. With Nighthawk X6, you have tri-band, so you basically have one more additional 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. So this is like increasing the number of, so if you have a single highway, now you have two highways. So you have two 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band to basically make sure that you can reduce the congestion in your home and reduce the number of, make sure that you are having all these devices spread across these two 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi bands.
Right, because essentially you might have two people in the household with a wireless device. If you are a person in the household where you don't have two wireless devices, you, sir or madam, are in the minority. I myself have a tremendous amount of devices, just me by myself. Of course, I'm only going to use one at a time. My wife, of course, has several devices, but if we have our family over or if we have friends over, definitely it's going to be able to take much more advantage of this particular router. So can you give us maybe some visual representation as to how this would actually help us?
Yeah, so typically in a home, and this is the key problem that we are trying to solve, as you rightly pointed out, is you have more and more devices inside the home. We're moving from where everybody used to watch a single program. Now you have kids maybe playing their own games and so on. My wife is watching Orange is the New Black on her iPad, and I'm catching up on some of the games and so on ESPN Watch. So everybody has his own screen.
And your son too, I'm sure, your kids.
Yes, so effectively you're reducing the bandwidth because you're spreading that bandwidth across all these multiple devices. Having that tri-band, having that additional 5 gigahertz band, again, doubles your bandwidth availability and allows you to make sure that you can separate these devices and you have more Wi-Fi bandwidth available for the increasing number of Wi-Fi devices inside your home.
Because essentially, if you're using maybe a standard iPhone, you're looking at a 1x1 device, right? And then you're jumping into maybe a laptop that has 3x3. And so clearly the laptop is much faster than the iPhone. And so I'm sure there are some technologies that are implemented here, but maybe we can show them a quick graph that might indicate this a little bit more firmly for those who don't understand. So essentially, if you look at the screen right now, you'll be able to notice that we have a full screen showing two devices connected to a standard AC
1750 Wi-Fi router. And then you have the same environment with the Nighthawk X6, the R8000, and you see the performance is almost similar. So this is the combined Wi-Fi performance, about 900 megabits per second.
Excellent.
But that's not a real life scenario, as we just talked about. Nobody has two devices in the home. So to give you a more real life example, we increase the number of devices from 2 devices to 8 devices.
Right.
Now, if you see on your screen, on the AC 1750 Wi-Fi router, the performance drops from from about 900 megabits to less than 200 megabits per second.
Wow.
So what's happening is now suddenly the router is spreading its bandwidth across these multiple devices. So it's assuming that all these devices are working at the same speed, and it gives the same amount of bandwidth to that iPhone, which is a 1x1, 150 megabits maximum speed, as compared to your latest MacBook Pro, which is a 3x3 802.11 AC running at 1300 megabits per second. So effectively, your fastest most expensive laptop that you just bought is running at the slowest speed of the device that is connected in your home network.
Okay. So
and that's what the Nighthawk X6 is doing. If you see on the right side, the Nighthawk X6, the actual performance is more than 900 megabits per second. So effectively, it is not impacted by having these multiple devices because it has these two highways. One on which your slower devices can work, and the second one which your faster devices can work. So if you are a typical home where you have these kind of issues, where you have multiple devices connected, streaming, online gaming at the same time, this is a product, this is a router which can give you 4 times the performance improvement without changing any of your devices in the home network.
Just changing the router straight up.
Just changing the router. Okay. And you're not asking you to basically go and buy the latest device. It's with the current set of devices giving you 4x the performance improvement.
So how is it able to do this? So what have you implemented, what feature set have you implemented in order to allow this router to do exactly that?
So what we have implemented here is a feature called Smart Connect. What Smart Connect does is once you turn on Smart Connect in your router, it basically both the 5 gigahertz SSID are the same, so you will only see, the customer will only see a single 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band.
Okay.
But once the device connects to the router will take into consideration, see how fast this device is. Is it an 802.11 AC device? Is it an 802.11 and 5 gigahertz device? Is it a 3x3, 2x2, 1x1? And it also looks at how far the device is. So it actually measures the actual throughput capability of that particular device.
Probably through signal strength or something to that effect.
So it looks at RSSI and certain parameters in terms of looking at the actual speed that this device can actually transmit at. And then it puts it in an appropriate 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. Okay. So it separates it into a slower and faster devices. To give you an analogy, it's like having bicycles and cars in the same highway today, if you put all of them. And that's why you see this performance drop from 900 megabits to 200 megabits per second.
That's fascinating.
Separating these two out, you now have a separate highway for bicycles, which is your slower Wi-Fi devices, and a separate one for your faster Wi-Fi devices. And that's how you get the better, faster throughput on all your devices.
Is that also including load balancing then too?
Yes, so what happens if you don't have any faster devices? You still want to make sure that you're utilizing these 5 gigahertz bandwidth band that you have, the 5 gigahertz band that you have, and the infrastructure that is available to you. So it also looks at how many devices are connected on each band.
Okay.
So if it finds that more than 3 devices on one band, and the 4th device automatically will go to the second 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band.
So let's say we have maybe 4 iPhones in a household, however that works out, and it says to itself, all right, well, yes, I could definitely put a 4th one on this particular band, on this 5 gigahertz band, but why do that when I have a band that's not being used at all? I'll balance the load, put 3 on one, 1 on the other, and continue to add it until that gets filled as well.
Exactly. So it looks at making sure that utilizing both the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. It also looks at the speed of the devices and make sure that it is utilizing and separating them out. So it's a combination of this load balancing with Smart Connect that is giving you the best combination, or making sure that each device in the appropriate Wi-Fi band to give you the best performance.
And it'll just keep doing that as it progresses. So
exactly.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a moment then. What if I were to instead buy this router here, buy two of the Nighthawk R7000s instead? Let's just say I'm going to do that. Of course, you're going to be paying an extra $100 for that second router, but let's just keep it all Netgear and talk about that for a moment. Why shouldn't I just do that? Because then technically I have 2 4 gigahertz bands and 2 5 gigahertz bands. Why shouldn't I do that? Absolutely,
that's a great question. So what happens is when you take these 2 Wi-Fi routers and put them next to each other, or even if you put them in a separate room, effectively these are still interfering with each other.
As long as they're within the transmission range of one another.
Yes,
right?
So the Wi-Fi is interfering with each other. What the Nighthawk X6 does is basically use a combination of hardware and software to separate out the 5 gigahertz into 2 different bands, a low band and a high band. And this ensures that these 2 5 gigahertz bands do not interfere with each other. Okay. So this is actually giving you a real throughput improvement. It's actually utilizing the 5 gigahertz band, making sure that these two 5 gigahertz band can coexist with each other without dropping the overall performance.
So basically, even if I were to change the channels, let's say of both 5 gigahertz radios and of course, obviously both 2.4 gigahertz radios, then still it wouldn't matter, because then they would have to talk to one another through Wi-Fi, a slower medium to which they'd need to communicate, versus the way you've developed this and designed this, the chips on board are communicating, and it knows already with an algorithm or however you do it, whatever mojo you use, it says, all right, well, this is a much faster way for me to say, all right, you get this band, you get this band, done. And there's nothing else involved. It just does it.
There's no interference involved. There's no communication required between these two AP points, which doesn't exist today. Really, if you buy two separate, there's no way for them to communicate with each other. Integrating them into a single box ensures that we can make sure that the central router is managing that, is ensuring that there's no interference between these two bands, and they are on completely separate spectrums of the overall 5 gigahertz band.
And something I wanted to bring into this too, another technical conversation we had actually prior to the interview, and that was that you could technically you advised me that you could technically take the R7000, set that up as an AP for, let's say, your entertainment center, right? You could take that, essentially put that right there and have gigabit Wi-Fi going from both Blackhawk routers, basically, or both Nighthawk routers, excuse me. I always want to call it Blackhawk, I don't know why. Black Hawk Down movie, probably. Anyways, so yes.
Yeah, so if you do not want to use Smart Connect, and you are a little bit more sophisticated customer, as most of your customers are, then you can actually set it up. You can switch off Smart Connect, and then you have two 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi band. So you could use one of this 5 gigahertz band to, as you rightly said, to connect to a Nighthawk, set up in a bridge mode, and then you have a gigabit wireless connection to your home entertainment center or to your range extender, and you can actually use that while you still have that 2.4 and 5 gigahertz available as a standard dual band router. Wow. So you have a dual band router with 2.4 and 5, and then you have this dedicated 5 gigahertz connection to your bridge, 802.11 AC bridge, which can be used like a gigabit Wi-Fi connection.
And which is obviously it's going to be much easier for someone in their household to be able to do it wirelessly as opposed to run cables through the house. I mean, I know so many families that are not interested in doing that whatsoever. So that's great. So two workarounds. One, you've obviously blown me out of the water here. We can't typically take two 5 gigahertz routers and make them work together as fast or as efficiently as the X6 will be able to do it. So that's fantastic. All right, Sandeep, so I want to talk a little bit about the specs, because clearly the R7000, that was a very powerful CPU that you guys use.
Dual core 1 gigahertz processor that we had here. So we actually have the same dual core 1 gigahertz processor here, but now we have added 3 offload processors, and these 3 offload processors are associated with each of the Wi-Fi radios. So that the tri-band that we have, the 2.4 and the 2.5 gigahertz, each Wi-Fi radio has its own dedicated Wi-Fi processor also.
That's fantastic. So if you have a lot of throughput coming through the wireless bands, then it's just handling that without slowing down the main processor that needs to do the overall work.
Exactly. So that basically means your Wi-Fi traffic is handled by that coprocessor or by that offload processor, and it's not. And your main processor is still free to run other applications like QoS, like VPN, or your USB 3.0 backups and so on. All these functions can be handled much faster because now you have more CPU cycles available on the main host processor.
Excellent.
And of course, the Wi-Fi is completely independent, so while you're doing these additional functions and VPN and so on, your Wi-Fi is still being handled by that dedicated offload processor.
Each one for each band, that's fantastic. So next question I actually have, and it's sort of a great segue since we're talking about the feature set, what are some of the other features that you're including with the X6?
So there are a lot of things here in terms of the USB port, the USB 3.0, the USB 2.0, and there are a bunch of features that we include along with that. So you can take a standard USB hard drive, connect it to the USB 3.0 port. USB 2.0 is for connecting a printer. So you could use anything, but being a slower port, we recommend you to use it for a printer, while USB 3.0 can be used to connect a standard hard drive. And then it becomes a shared hard drive all across the entire home. So the devices, any of the devices inside the home can then access the shared hard drive. We also have a lot of software that we bundle along with it. So we have an application called ReadyShare Vault, which is a backup application for your Windows PCs. Okay. So you can just install that, and very simple to set up. It will automatically recognize the hard drive that is connected to the router. It will recognize the typical data files that you have, your My Documents, My Pictures, My Videos, and you set it up for it's a single-click backup setup. And once the backup is done, it automatically monitors any changes that are there in the data files. So you add your latest vacation photographs, automatically these are backed up to the central USB hard drive.
So then basically, just for clarification purposes, it's not making full images, but it is recording all of the data from certain folders, I'm guessing like My Documents or the users folder, and for instance on the...
Yeah, so you could either pick and choose, or you have basically it automatically looks for this kind of a data, and it will automatically search and say My Documents, My Pictures, but you can also pick and choose certain folders that you want to back up or you don't want to back up, and you can all set it up. And once it's set up, it'll keep these snapshots. So by mistake, I basically went and deleted a particular file. I can go back in time to an older snapshot and bring back that particular file. Or in the unlikely case that I'm actually lost my hard disk drive or had a hard drive crash, I can actually go and install all the files that are there on my new PC, on my new hard drive.
So that's for Windows. Do you have anything for Mac users?
So for Mac users, Apple already has a Time Machine, which is the backup software. We support Time Machine. That means if you're running Time Machine on the Mac, it will recognize the USB hard drive which is connected to the router, and you can take backups on that USB hard drive.
Fantastic. Okay. In terms of the rest of the feature set, what?
So going beyond in terms of the backup functions, now that you have a centralized kind of a storage of all your data, we provide functionality to basically go and access that storage and share it on different screens inside the home. So this is a DLNA certified server. So if you're using Genie, which is our application for managing your home network, you can actually access and look at the USB hard drive which is connected to the router. You will see all the media content on this, your pictures, your videos. Your friends come over and you want to share your last vacation photographs. You don't need to go and bring your laptop or so on. You can just take out your phone, open up Genie on this, look for the USB hard drive, take that latest pictures and screen it onto your smart TV sitting on the couch.
So it's acting as a remote too for any other DLNA?
Yes, you can use it as a remote, or you can use it as a DLNA player to actually watch that content on that Android or on an iOS device.
That's fantastic. Now I know there's a couple of things we spoke about too that are also interlinked to that particular app. One of them is what was it called? The sharing?
The Turbo Transfer?
Turbo Transfer.
Yes.
So you can share files amongst one another.
All right. So Genie is a very popular application that we bundle along with actually all the Netgear Wi-Fi routers. And this is a client application that will reside on the PC or on the Mac or on the iOS or on the Android device. And this gives you a very easy function to manage the home network. As I said, typically in a household today, you have 10 to 15 devices. So it's no different from really a small office kind of environment. So you want to look at it and see what devices are connected to the Wi-Fi router. What is the SSID? What's the password? You have friends coming over and you want to basically make sure that you want to set up a guest Wi-Fi. So again, all these functions can be done easily using the Genie application.
And actually not just because I really want to highlight the adding of a guest, because that's, if you have your own files in your household that are being shared through this router, and that becomes a security issue when you have friends come over that maybe just accidentally like to delete things, for instance, or just to troll you like to delete things. You want to be able to keep that separate and safe. So obviously having guest access is really important, but you showed me something really interesting about the Genie app, which allows you to create guest access like that. So
yeah, so when you set up a guest access, or it also develops a QR code. So it shows you a QR code. So friends comes over and say, I want to access your Wi-Fi. Again, I take out my phone and then click Genie on it, click on guest Wi-Fi, and I set it up that I want this new guest access to be set up for 2 hours. So I don't have to go up and remove that later on. It'll just go off after 2 hours. And it also gives me a QR code, and I just show you the QR code on my phone, and you can scan that using Netgear Genie if you have it installed, or any QR code scanner that you have, and it will automatically capture the SSID, the network name, and and the password, and you can just copy and paste into your when you try to connect to Wi-Fi.
Just in your setup of whatever device you're currently
Whatever
using.
setup and device you have. So it makes it very simple and easy to connect to the home network or to set up guest Wi-Fi. But to answer your earlier question about turbo transfer, which I never answered.
I just like to take you completely off course. Sorry, Sandeep.
No problem. So turbo transfer is, again, a unique utility, which is basically making it easy for people to transfer files within the home network. So I have a PC, I have a Mac, I have an iPhone, and I have an Android device. How do I transfer files between all of these devices? So typically people send emails to themselves or take a USB drive, take backups, and then transfer it. All that is fast. If you have Genie, you can basically go and pick up any file that you want to transfer, go to the network map, and just drag and drop that particular file, and you can transfer that file from your PC to your Mac or to your iOS device.
Just
makes
that
it very
quickly.
simple.
Yeah, especially if you're going to maybe transmit music and just in a really fast way. You're going to run down to the pool for a few minutes, transfer it over, and then grab your phone and go.
Yeah, so
Something
it's
really
Netgear
simple.
Genie is really a very useful software, not only for network management, but also for all of the things in terms of accessing your media, utilizing your basically transferring files and everything. It's all about connectivity. It's all about making it simpler and easier for people to connect to various devices inside the home and making sure that you have control over it and you can make changes as and when you need it.
So Sandeep, I know a lot of users out there are familiar with QoS. We talk about it quite a bit, of course, on the channel, and QoS is quality of service. And essentially what that means is, how do I get everybody to download at the same time or to use the internet at the same time without affecting one another? I know this router, as it stands right now today, it doesn't have it, but I've heard a rumor that there's something cool coming down the pipeline. Can you talk about this?
Absolutely. So we have a new firmware coming up, which is expected by October timeframe, early Q4, which will actually have a much more advanced QoS. So it'll be both for downstream and upstream. It'll recognize different applications, hundreds of applications. If you're downloading Netflix while you're playing games on other PC, or you're trying to download a particular file, it'll recognize all these various applications and then based on that give it priority to make sure that you're getting the best experience across all these devices being utilized at the same time, because all the applications that are being used at the same time. It's not only application aware, it's also device aware. So if you're watching Netflix on, say, a 65-inch screen TV, and you're watching Netflix on your iPad, it'll know that the iPad is a slightly lower priority because it's just a smaller screen. So having that ability and the granularity in terms of understanding the device and understanding the applications, it can give you the best experience.
That's fantastic.
So it just takes a little bit longer. Good things take time. So we're expecting to have it by early Q4. So it's coming. It's not there today, but it's coming.
Okay, and one last thing I want to ask you too is repeater ability. Does this router currently, as it stands, have the ability to be ran as a repeater?
No, currently it doesn't support a repeater mode. Again, the current repeater mode that we have today doesn't support the latest security, the WPA2 and so on. So we are working on a newer version that will actually have this repeater mode that will have support for all the various security measures when you set it up in a repeater mode. And that will also be a new firmware that will be available before the end of the year, which will have support for, which will allow this router to be set up as a repeater and with all the various security modes enabled or supported. But right now, I don't think this is really supposed to be the main router in the home. Most of the people will install this as a main router. Maybe at some point in time you want to replace this with some next generation router in a year's time.
Netgear again?
Yes, hopefully, yes. And then by the time, we definitely will have a repeater mode at that time.
Fantastic. So Sandeep, I know we talked briefly about other iOS-related or Apple-related connectivity in terms of Time Machine, but what can we do in terms of like iTunes Media Server?
Right, so like we spoke about DLNA earlier in terms of making it so easy to go and access the USB hard drive and play any content on DLNA player. We do the same for iTunes also. So now if you have any music in your iTunes, either on your PC or a Mac, which is there in the home network or in the USB hard drive, you can basically go and access that music and play it on any AirPlay compatible device in your home network. So you could download Apple Remote on your iPad or your iPhone and use it as a controller, or play it directly from your Apple TV. It'll see that particular iTunes content which is there on the USB hard drive or on the PC and Mac, and you can play that content.
Okay, so a lot of people out there are also trying to connect into their homes to, get a virtual private network set up and basically connect in remotely to gain access to all the resources they have at their home. I'm assuming then that there's VPN set up for this router as well.
Right, so we have actually a dynamic DNS service or a custom URL, so you can actually set up a custom URL for a name. You could say steve.mynetgear.com, so you don't have to remember an IP address. And then you have OpenVPN, which allows you actually a secure remote access along with this. So wherever you are, you can basically go, just type in open up the OpenVPN client, type in your IP address, and then type in your custom URL, steve.mynetgear.com, and you can go and access your home network as if you're in the same network. And then you have access to all the devices that are there. You have access to the files that are there. You have access to the printer. You have access to the camera, the IP camera, and so on that you have. All these devices are accessible from your home network using it. And all this is done securely using VPN.
Basically because anything connected to this router, so files that are connected to it or anything else you have connected to it, like your IP camera network, and that's definitely going to be accessible through that, so that's fantastic.
Right.
Well, Sandeep, thank you so much. It's been very educational having you in here, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Steve.
No problem. And thank you guys also for watching. Don't forget, if you like videos like this one, you want to see more just like it, you can check us out at our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Newegg. And until then, we will see you guys very soon.